Subscribe to Storylab. Now, let's begin this one. The base hummed with its usual controlled chaos, helicopters lifting off, drill sergeants barking orders, the metallic clang of equipment being loaded. Commander Tyler Albright stood at his office window, watching the organized disorder below. 23 years in the military had taught him to find calm in the storm. At 47, he'd led operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. He'd survived ambushes, IEDs, and political clusterfucks that would have broken lesser men. But none of that compared to being a father. His phone buzzed. Jake's name lit up the screen. Tyler smiled. His 17-year-old son had been distant lately, wrestling with typical teenage stuff, college applications, a girlfriend who just dumped him, the awkwardness of having a stepmother after Tyler's remarriage 3 years ago. Jake lived with Tyler and his new wife Dora during the school year, spending summers with his biological mother Charlene. "Hey, buddy, you at practice?" Tyler answered, expecting to hear about basketball tryouts. Instead, sirens, screaming, and Jake's voice, strangled with terror. "Dad, he shot me." Tyler's world stopped. Jake? Stepmom's brother. Chuck. He had a gun. "Dad, I can't feel my legs." The line went dead. Tyler was already running, phone pressed to his ear as he dialed 911, demanding information, his voice sharp with command authority that made the dispatcher snap to attention. Cedar Heights Memorial Hospital. Gunshot victim, multiple wounds. His son. The 40-minute drive took 23. Tyler broke every speed limit, his mind fracturing into two modes, the tactical commander analyzing threat response, and the father drowning in raw fear. He called Dora. She didn't answer. He called again. Nothing. He tried his ex-wife, Charlene. Voicemail. Where the hell was everyone? The emergency room exploded with controlled chaos when he arrived. Nurses rushed past, doctors shouted orders, and Tyler's military credentials got him through security faster than any civilian could manage. A young surgeon, with exhausted eyes, met him in the hallway. "Commander Albright? I'm Dr. Seth Lord. Your son's in surgery now. 5 gunshot wounds, 2 in the abdomen, 1 in the shoulder, 1 in the thigh, and 1 that entered through his lower back and lodged near his spine. 5 bullets." Tyler's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. "Prognosis? He's critical but stable. We're working on the spinal injury now. The bleeding was severe. He lost a lot of blood before the ambulance arrived." "Doctor." Lord's expression darkened. "Sir, there was a significant delay in the 911 call. Your son was shot at approximately 3:47 p.m. The call wasn't placed until 4:23 p.m. 36 minutes. Jake had bled out for more than half an hour before anyone called for help. Where was his stepmother?" Tyler's voice could have cut steel. "I don't have that information. The police are involved. Detective Cantrell wants to speak with you." Tyler found Detective Gregory Cantrell in a private waiting room, a heavy-set man in his 50s with sharp eyes that had seen too much human ugliness. He stood when Tyler entered. "Commander Albright, I'm sorry about your son." Cantrell gestured to a chair, but Tyler remained standing. "I need to ask you some questions about your family situation. My son's in surgery fighting for his life because my wife's brother shot him. That's the situation. Your current wife, Dora Albright, formerly Dora O'Neill. Her brother is Chuck O'Neill, correct?" "Yes." "Where is he?" "Where's Dora?" Cantrell's expression shifted. "Chuck O'Neill fled the scene. We have an APB out. As for your wife..." He pulled out his phone, showed Tyler a social media photo. Dora, grinning at some upscale restaurant. Champagne glass raised, timestamp, 4:15 p.m. She was at a birthday party for a friend. Posted this about the time your son was bleeding out in your home. The rage that swept through Tyler was cold, military-grade fury. She was home when it happened. According to the initial report, yes. She left approximately 15 minutes after the shooting. Your son managed to crawl to the landline. That's how he called 911. He told the operator his stepmother heard the shots and left the house. She heard the shots and left. Tyler's mind, trained to process combat intelligence, began assembling pieces. Chuck O'Neill had access to the house. He'd been there dozens of times, always with some excuse: needed money, needed a place to crash, needed Tyler to co-sign something. Tyler had tolerated him because Dora asked. Chuck was her only family, she'd said. Their parents were dead, and she wanted him in her life. What's Chuck's story? Tyler asked. Cantrell flipped through his notes. 34 years old, history of petty crime, drug possession, assault charges that got pled down. He's been working odd jobs, mostly construction. Financial records show he's broke multiple evictions, repossessed car, gambling debts. The detective paused. You think this was random? A burglary gone wrong? My son said Chuck shot him. Not a man or someone. He identified him. Tyler's tactical brain was running scenarios. This was deliberate. That's what concerns me. Your son was shot in his own bedroom. The house wasn't ransacked. Nothing was stolen. And Jake told responding officers that Chuck walked in, said nothing personal, kid, and started firing. Nothing personal. Like an execution. Pulled Chuck's phone records, his bank accounts, everything. Tyler's voice was granite. Cantrell nodded. We're on it. But Commander, I need you to prepare yourself. Your son's injuries are severe. Even if he survives, the spinal damage. He'll survive. Tyler wouldn't accept any other outcome. My son is strong. The surgery lasted 7 hours. Tyler paced the waiting room like a caged animal, calling Dora repeatedly. She finally answered around 9 p.m., her voice slurred with alcohol. Tyler, oh my God. I just saw your messages. Where were you? I was at Francine's birthday party. I told you about it. Your brother shot our son. Silence. Then, almost too controlled. What? Chuck shot Jake. 5 times. Jake's in surgery right now. And you left him bleeding in our house to go drink champagne with your friends. I didn't know. I heard something, but I thought it was the TV. Jake's always playing those violent video games. You thought 5 gunshots were a video game? Tyler's voice could have frozen fire. You didn't check on him? You just left? I was already late, and Jake was in his room with the door closed. And I thought, Tyler, you can't blame me for this. Chuck must have had some kind of breakdown. Tyler hung up. He didn't trust himself to speak anymore. Dr. Lord emerged at 2:17 a.m. His scrubs were spattered with blood, Jake's blood. He made it through surgery. We've stabilized the spinal injury, repaired the damaged organs, and he's receiving transfusions. The doctor's expression was cautiously optimistic. He's young and strong. But Commander, you need to understand the bullet that hit his spine caused significant trauma. We won't know the extent of the damage until the swelling goes down, but there's a strong possibility of paralysis. Tyler felt the words like physical blows, but he kept his composure. Can I see him? Jake looked small in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed, keeping him alive. His face was pale, almost gray, and tubes ran from his arms and chest. Tyler pulled a chair close and took his son's hand carefully, mindful of the IV lines. I'm here, buddy. You're going to be okay. I promise. The words felt hollow, but he meant them with every fiber of his being. He'd survived combat zones, but watching his son fight for life made him feel helpless in a way no enemy ever had. His phone buzzed. Anthony Wilcox, his second-in-command and closest friend in the military. Sir, I heard about Jake. What do you need? Find Chuck O'Neill. I don't care how. Copy that. Dora showed up at the hospital around noon the next day, her face puffy from crying or drinking. Tyler couldn't tell which. She tried to hug him, but he stepped back. How is he? Alive. No thanks to you or your brother. Tyler, please, I didn't know what Chuck was going to do. Where is he? I don't know. I swear. I haven't heard from him. When did you last talk to him? She hesitated. Just a fraction of a second, but Tyler caught it. 2 days ago. He called asking for money again. Did you give it to him? No. I told him we couldn't keep helping him. Tyler studied her face, applying the same skills he used to interrogate informants in war zones. She was lying. He didn't know about what specifically, but something in her story didn't track. Detective Cantrell arrived that afternoon with news. We found Chuck O'Neill's car abandoned near the Mexican border. He's running. You put out alerts? Border Patrol, FBI. Everyone's looking. He won't get far. Cantrell pulled Tyler aside, away from Dora. Commander, there's something else. We pulled Chuck's bank records like you suggested. He handed Tyler a printout. 3 weeks ago, a deposit of $25,000, wire transfer, sender anonymous but traced to an offshore account. $25,000. 24 hours before that deposit, Chuck O'Neill had been broke, facing eviction. Now he had enough money to disappear. This was a hit, Tyler said quietly. Someone paid him. That's our working theory. The question is who and why. Tyler looked through the waiting room window at Dora, who sat beside Jake's bed, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. His second wife, the woman he'd trusted with his son's life. Was she capable of this? Then, he thought of Charlene, his ex-wife. She'd been bitter about the divorce, furious when he'd remarried, resentful of the child support payments. She'd fought him for full custody of Jake and lost. Could she hate their son enough to? No. No parent could do that. But Tyler had seen enough evil in his life to know that some people were capable of anything. Detective, I need you to look into my ex-wife's finances too. Charlene Kaplan. Cantrell's eyebrows rose. You think Jake's own mother? I don't know what to think anymore. But someone paid Chuck O'Neill 25 grand, and I'm going to find out who. Jake regained consciousness 3 days later. His first word was Dad, and Tyler felt something break inside him, relief, love, and fury all mixed together. Hey buddy, welcome back. Jake's voice was weak, raspy from the breathing tube. Chuck, he just walked in. I know. Don't worry about that now. Just focus on getting better. Dad, I can't feel my legs. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Dr. Lord had warned them, but hearing Jake say it made it real. We're going to work on that. Physical therapy, everything possible. He said it wasn't personal. Jake's eyes filled with tears. Why would he shoot me if it wasn't personal? Because someone paid him. Because your life was worth $25,000 to somebody. But Tyler couldn't say that to his son. Not yet. I don't know, Jake. But I'm going to find out. Over the next week, Tyler divided his time between the hospital and working with Detective Cantrell. The investigation was moving slowly, too slowly for Tyler's patience. Chuck O'Neill had vanished, probably into Mexico. Dora maintained her innocence, claiming she had no idea why her brother would do this. Charlene, when finally reached, had expressed appropriate horror and flew in from her home in Nevada to see Jake. Tyler watched her carefully. Charlene was 44, still attractive, with the kind of sharp intelligence that had drawn him to her 20 years ago. They'd married young. He was fresh out of officer training. She was working as a paralegal. Jake had been born a year later, and for a while, life was good. Then Tyler's deployments became longer and more frequent. Charlene grew resentful, lonely. She had an affair with her boss. Tyler found out, filed for divorce, won primary custody, because Charlene's affair partner had a history of domestic violence. She'd never forgiven him for that. Now, she sat in Jake's hospital room, holding their son's hand, crying softly. My baby, my poor baby. Was this grief real or performance? Tyler couldn't tell anymore. The shooting had broken something in his ability to trust, to believe in basic human decency. Then Detective Cantrell called him into the hallway, his face grave. Commander, we need to talk. Privately. They went to a conference room. Cantrell closed the door and spread documents across the table. Bank statements, wire transfer records, phone logs. We traced that $25,000. Tyler's heart rate spiked. And? The offshore account was accessed from an IP address registered to a coffee shop in Las Vegas. We pulled security footage. He opened his laptop, showed Tyler a grainy video. A woman in sunglasses and a hat sat at a laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. The angle wasn't perfect, but Tyler recognized the sharp jawline, the distinctive way she tucked her hair behind her ear. Charlene. We've got phone records too. 14 calls between Charlene's cell and Chuck O'Neill's burner phone in the 3 weeks before the shooting. And, Commander, Cantrell's voice softened. I'm sorry, but we found texts on Chuck's phone. He wasn't good at deleting them. He showed Tyler the messages. Charlene, is it done? Chuck, kid's tough. But yeah, it's done. Charlene, good. The rest of the money will come when I confirm. Tyler read the text 3 times, trying to make them say something different. Trying to find any interpretation that didn't mean his ex-wife Jake's mother had paid to have their son murdered. Why? The word came out strangled. Why would she do this? Cantrell pulled out another document. Life insurance policy, $2 million on Jake's life, with Charlene as the sole beneficiary. Taken out 6 months ago, The boyfriend she's been living with in Vegas, he's got gambling debts. Serious ones. Casino markers. Loan sharks, the works. They needed money fast, and Jake was worth more dead than alive. The rage that filled Tyler was incandescent, apocalyptic. His ex-wife had tried to murder their son for insurance money. She'd paid her current husband's future brother-in-law because Tyler found evidence Dora and Chuck had been discussing a business arrangement that fell through. No, wait. He needed to process this correctly. Where's Dora in all this? That's the interesting part. Dora's clean. She didn't know about the arrangement. Chuck approached her, asking to borrow money 3 weeks ago. She refused, and he got desperate. Charlene somehow found out about Chuck's situation, probably through mutual acquaintances, and made him an offer. So Dora was innocent. Negligent for leaving the house after hearing gunshots. Too self-absorbed to check on her stepson, but not complicit in attempted murder. Tyler felt a cold clarity settle over him. The kind of clarity he'd felt in combat when the mission parameters became crystal clear. Are you arresting Charlene? We have a warrant. She'll be in custody within the hour. And Chuck? Still in the wind, but the net's closing. Mexican authorities are cooperating. Tyler nodded slowly. Thank you, Detective. Cantrell studied him. Commander, I know what you're thinking. Don't. Let the system handle this. Of course. Tyler's voice was perfectly level, perfectly controlled. But they both knew he was lying. That night, after Charlene was arrested at her Las Vegas home, Tyler sat in Jake's hospital room and watched his son sleep. The doctors said he'd live. The paralysis might be permanent, might be temporary. They'd know more in a few weeks. Physical therapy would be grueling. Life would never be the same. All because Charlene wanted $2 million. The door opened softly. Anthony Wilcox stepped in, out of uniform, his face grim. Sir, I heard about the arrest. Tyler didn't look away from Jake. She tried to kill our son for insurance money. Permission to speak freely? Granted. What are you going to do? Tyler was quiet for a long moment. Then, what I should have done the moment I saw those wire transfers. What the system won't do properly. The system will convict her. She'll spend the rest of her life in prison. Prison isn't enough. Tyler's voice was soft, but it carried the weight of absolute certainty. Not for this. You're talking about going outside the law. I'm talking about justice. Real justice. Anthony was quiet. They'd served together for 15 years, through 3 deployments, countless firefights. They'd saved each other's lives more times than either could count. Finally, Anthony said, "What do you need?" Tyler turned to face him. Everything we know about Charlene's life in Vegas. Her boyfriend, his associates, his debts, Chuck O'Neill's location when you find him. And I need it off the books. You know, if you do this, there's no coming back. I'm a father before I'm a soldier. And someone tried to kill my son. Anthony nodded once. I'll get you the intel. Over the next 2 weeks, while Jake began the painful process of physical therapy and the legal system ground through its procedures, Tyler planned. He used every skill he'd learned in 23 years of military service intelligence gathering. Operational planning. Tactical execution. Anthony provided information through encrypted channels. Charlene's boyfriend, Ricardo Shepard, owed $400,000 to various casinos and loan sharks. The kind of debt that got people disappeared in the Nevada desert. He'd pressured Charlene to find a way out, and she'd chosen murder. Chuck O'Neill had been spotted in Tijuana, living in a flop house, spending his blood money on drugs and prostitutes. Detective Cantrell updated Tyler regularly on the official investigation. The evidence against Charlene was overwhelming: wire transfers, text messages, security footage. She'd be charged with conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and a dozen other felonies. Her lawyer was already working on a plea deal. 30 years in prison, maybe out in 20 with good behavior. Not enough. Not nearly enough. Tyler requested leave from the military, citing family emergency. His commanding officer approved immediately. Everyone knew what had happened to Jake. What they didn't know was that Tyler had no intention of returning to service after what he was about to do. He visited Jake every day, helped with physical therapy, read to him, talked about college and basketball, and all the future that his son deserved. Jake was making progress. Sensation was returning to his legs, though movement was still limited. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. And every night, Tyler refined his plan. It wasn't enough to kill Charlene and Chuck. Death was too quick, too clean. They needed to suffer the way Jake had suffered, bleeding out while help didn't come. They needed to understand the magnitude of their crime. Tyler knew dozens of ways to kill someone. He'd been trained in close-quarters combat, marksmanship, demolitions. He could make it look like an accident, a suicide, a random act of violence. But that wasn't justice. That was just murder. No, what Tyler had in mind was more surgical, more poetic. He was going to destroy them from the inside out, using the very things they'd valued over his son's life. Money, freedom, hope. The plan crystallized one night as he sat in his home office, looking at photographs of Jake throughout the years. First steps, first day of school, basketball games, birthdays, all the moments Charlene had been willing to erase for cash. Tyler made phone calls to people he'd worked with in intelligence, contacts who operated in gray areas. He wired money from accounts Dora didn't know about, combat bonuses, hazard pay, saved over years of deployment. He called in favors from other military contacts stationed abroad. And he waited. Charlene's arraignment was scheduled for October 15th. Tyler attended, sitting in the courtroom gallery, watching as his ex-wife was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit and shackles. She looked smaller, somehow diminished. Her eyes found his across the room, and something passed between them, her pleading, him cold as winter. The judge read the charges: conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, wire fraud. The list went on. Charlene's lawyer entered a not guilty plea, arguing that the evidence was circumstantial, that his client had been framed. It was theater. Everyone knew she'd done it. Bail was set at $2 million, ironic, given that was the exact amount she'd tried to collect from Jake's death. Ricardo Shepard couldn't make bail. His gambling debts had destroyed his credit, and the loan sharks weren't interested in helping. Charlene went back to county jail. That night, Tyler got a call from Anthony. Chuck's been located, still in Tijuana. I have the address. Good. Phase 1 starts tomorrow. Tyler, are you sure about this? Never been more sure of anything in my life. Then I'm with you. Whatever you need. Tyler smiled grimly. I need you to stay clean. This is on me. Like hell it is. Jake's my godson too. In the end, Anthony's loyalty won. They'd been through too much together for Tyler to push him away now. The next morning, Tyler crossed the border into Mexico. Tijuana was exactly the kind of controlled chaos Tyler understood: corrupt police, cartel influence, tourists looking for cheap thrills. He'd been in worse places during his deployments. This felt almost comfortable. Chuck O'Neill was living in a third-floor walk-up in a neighborhood where the buildings leaned on each other like drunks. Tyler watched the flophouse for 2 days, learning Chuck's patterns. The man came and went irregularly, usually drunk or high, always alone. He'd burned through most of the $25,000 already. Drugs weren't cheap, and neither were the women he brought back to his room. On the third night, Tyler followed Chuck into a bar called El Gato Negro. The place smelled like stale beer and cigarette smoke, and narco corridos blared from a jukebox in the corner. Chuck sat at the bar, ordered tequila, and worked on getting drunk. Tyler sat 3 stools down, ordered whiskey he didn't drink, and waited. An hour later, Chuck stumbled toward the bathroom. Tyler followed. The bathroom was grimy. 1 urinal, 1 stall, a sink with a cracked mirror. Chuck was pissing when Tyler locked the door behind them. Chuck O'Neill. Chuck spun around, nearly falling, scrambling to zip up. Who the fuck? Then recognition. His face went white. Oh shit. Oh shit, man, look. Tyler moved fast. Military-trained reflexes crushing Chuck against the wall. Forearm across his throat. You shot my son. I didn't want to. She made me, she said. 5 bullets. 1 hit his spine. He may never walk again. Chuck's eyes were wide with terror, pupils blown from whatever he'd been using. I'm sorry. Man, I'm so sorry. You said nothing personal before you pulled the trigger. She paid me. I needed the money. Tyler increased the pressure on Chuck's throat. You sold my son's life for $25,000. I'm sorry. Chuck was crying now, tears and snot running down his face. Please, man, please. Tyler stepped back, let him drop to the floor. Chuck gasped for air, coughing. Here's what's going to happen, Tyler said quietly. You're going to turn yourself into the FBI field office in Tijuana tomorrow morning. You're going to confess everything, the money, Charlene's texts, all of it. I can't go to prison, man. Or, I can leave you here in this bathroom. And the cartel members I paid off in the next room will come in and do what I asked them to. Tyler showed him his phone, a photo of 3 men with tattoos and dead eyes, holding weapons. They owe me a favor from when I helped them avoid a DEA sting 3 years ago. They'll make your death last days. It was a bluff. Tyler hadn't talked to any cartel members, but Chuck was too terrified and too high to question it. Or, Tyler continued, you cooperate with the FBI, testify against Charlene, and maybe you get a deal. 15 years instead of life. You'll survive prison if you keep your head down. Chuck was shaking. Why would you let me live? Because death is too easy. I want you to spend the next 15 years thinking about what you did every single day. I want you to remember Jake's face. I want prison to break you the way you try to break my son. Tyler opened the door, stepped into the hallway. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow. After that, I make one phone call, and your body will never be found. He walked out of the bar without looking back. Chuck O'Neill turned himself in the next morning. The story made news. Attempted murder suspect surrenders in Mexico. Agrees to testify against co-conspirator. Charlene's lawyer tried to suppress the testimony, but it was useless. Chuck's confession was detailed, corroborated by physical evidence. The prosecution offered Charlene a plea deal. 35 years, no possibility of parole. Her lawyer advised her to take it. A trial would result in life without parole, possibly death penalty given the premeditated nature of the crime. Charlene refused. She wanted her day in court, wanted to tell her side of the story. Tyler watched the trial from the gallery, day after day. Listened to the prosecution lay out the case, the insurance policy, the wire transfers, the text messages. Listened to Chuck O'Neill's testimony, the man's voice shaking as he described how Charlene had approached him, offered him money, told him exactly when Jake would be home alone. She said it had to look like a burglary, Chuck testified. But she wanted to make sure he died. She said Jake was ruining her life, costing her too much money. Jake was in the courtroom too, in a wheelchair. Physical therapy, having restored some function, but not enough for him to walk unassisted yet. He listened to his mother's crimes laid out in clinical detail, tears streaming down his face. Charlene's defense was weak. She claimed Chuck was lying, that she'd been framed, that Tyler had manipulated evidence because he wanted to destroy her. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s who'd clearly seen too many tragedies in her courtroom. Miss Kaplan, she said, using Charlene's maiden name, you attempted to murder your own child for financial gain. This court has seen many terrible things, but few crimes are as depraved as what you've done. The prosecution has recommended life without parole, and I see no reason to disagree. Charlene finally broke down, sobbing, begging for mercy. Please, I'm sorry. You didn't think your son's life was worth more than $2 million. The judge's voice was ice. You didn't think about the pain you'd cause. You didn't think about anything except money. Life without parole. Take her away. As deputies led Charlene out, she looked at Tyler one last time. He met her eyes, let her see the complete lack of forgiveness there. But Tyler wasn't done. Ricardo Shepard, Charlene's boyfriend, had lost everything. The loan sharks weren't patient men. He'd borrowed from the wrong people, and now they wanted their money. Tyler made a phone call to a contact, a former military intelligence officer who now worked in private security, operating in areas where the law was flexible. Stewart, I need information on a man named Ricardo Shepard, Las Vegas. Heavy gambling debts. Stuart Harmon had owed Tyler his life since a firefight in Fallujah 10 years ago. What kind of information? The kind that helps his creditors find him. You want him dead? I want him to understand consequences. 3 days later, Ricardo Shepard was found beaten in an alley behind a Vegas casino. Both legs broken, 3 ribs cracked, face so swollen he was barely recognizable. The message was clear. Pay your debts, or next time you die. Ricardo couldn't pay. The loan sharks gave him 1 week to come up with the money. Tyler made another call, this time to a prosecutor he'd worked with on a terrorism case. I have information about illegal gambling operations in Las Vegas. Wire fraud, money laundering, the works, and I have a witness willing to testify. Ricardo Shepard was offered a deal. Testify against the loan sharks and enter witness protection, or be left to their mercy. He took the deal. The loan sharks went to prison. Ricardo got a new identity and was relocated to some small town in Montana where he'd spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, knowing that someday someone might find him. It wasn't death, but it was close enough. 6 months after the shooting, Jake took his first unassisted steps. The physical therapy had been agonizing, but he'd pushed through it with the same stubborn determination his father had. The doctors called it a miracle. Tyler called it his son's strength. They were in the hospital gym, Jake gripping parallel bars, sweat pouring down his face as he moved one foot in front of the other. "That's it, buddy. Keep going." Jake made it 10 feet before his legs gave out, but Tyler caught him. They both laughed, the sound echoing in the empty gym. "I'm going to walk again, Dad. I'm going to play basketball again." "I know you are." That night, Tyler got a call from Detective Cantrell. "Just wanted to let you know Chuck O'Neill got shanked in prison last week. He's alive, but barely. Seems he made some enemies." Tyler said nothing. And Ricardo Shepard's witness protection got compromised. "Someone leaked his location. He's on the run again." "That's unfortunate." "Yeah." Cantrell was quiet for a moment. "Commander, I know what you did. I can't prove it. But I know. I don't know what you're talking about. You used your military contacts to ensure both men would suffer. Chuck will spend his prison sentence terrified of another attack. Ricardo will never feel safe again. If that's true, sounds like justice to me. That's not how the system works. The system gave Charlene 3 meals a day and a bed. My son will never be the same. So forgive me if I don't think the system is enough." Cantrell sighed. "I should arrest you. You have no evidence." "No, I don't." Another pause. "How's Jake doing?" "He walked 10 feet today." "Good. That's good." Cantrell's voice softened. "For what it's worth, Commander. I'm a father too. I understand. Do you?" "Yeah, I do. And if someone had done to my kid what Charlene did to Jake." He trailed off. "Just be careful. You've already lost too much." Tyler hung up and went back to Jake's room. His son was asleep, finally peaceful after months of pain and fear. Dora sat beside the bed, holding Jake's hand. She looked up when Tyler entered. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For everything. For my brother, for not checking on Jake, for being so blind. You couldn't have known. I should have. He was my brother. And I knew he was capable of terrible things, and I still let him near our family." She wiped her eyes. "I'll understand if you want a divorce." Tyler thought about it. Dora had been negligent, but not malicious. She'd been self-absorbed and careless. But she hadn't known about the murder plot. And in the months since, she'd been at Jake's side constantly, helping with physical therapy, crying with him through the pain. "No," Tyler said, "we're going to get through this together." A year after the shooting, Jake walked onto the basketball court at his high school for the first time since the attack. He'd worked with physical therapists, personal trainers, and his father to rebuild his strength. The doctors said he'd never play competitively again, that the spinal damage was too severe. Jake proved them wrong. He wasn't as fast as he'd been before, couldn't jump as high, but he'd adapted his game. He was smarter now, more tactical, using positioning and strategy to compensate for reduced athleticism. Tyler watched from the stands as Jake scored his first basket, the crowd erupting in applause. His son looked up at him, grinning, and Tyler felt something break inside him, all the rage and pain and fury of the last year finally releasing. They'd survived. Jake would have a life, a future. He'd applied to colleges and gotten accepted to 3 good schools. He had a girlfriend who'd stuck by him through the recovery. He was healing. That night, Tyler got a final call from Stuart Harmon. "Just for your information, Chuck O'Neill died this afternoon. Another prison fight. This time they got him in the liver. Bled out in the infirmary." Tyler felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief. Just emptiness. And Ricardo Shepard? Disappeared completely. "Even I can't find him. He's either dead or might as well be." And Charlene? Life without parole means life. She'll die in prison eventually. Tyler thanked Stuart and hung up. It was done. The people who tried to destroy his son had been destroyed. In turn, Charlene in prison. Chuck dead, Ricardo forever running. Justice. Real justice, not the sanitized version the courts provided. He thought about what Detective Cantrell had said, that revenge was corrosive, that it would eat at him. But Tyler didn't feel corroded. He felt clean for the first time in a year. His son was alive and walking. The people responsible were gone or suffering. That was enough. 2 years later, Jake graduated high school and enrolled in college on an academic scholarship. The basketball dreams were gone, but he'd found a new passion studying physical therapy, wanting to help other people recover from traumatic injuries. Tyler retired from the military with full honors. No one ever connected him to Chuck O'Neill's prison death or Ricardo Shepard's disappearance. He'd been too careful, used too many cutouts, operated with the same precision he'd used in combat zones. He and Dora stayed together. Their marriage wasn't perfect, how could it be, after everything, but they made it work. She'd proven her loyalty through Jake's recovery, and Tyler had learned to forgive her negligence, if not forget it. On Jake's 20th birthday, father and son went hiking in the mountains, something they'd done before the shooting. Jake moved carefully, using a walking stick to help with balance, but he made it to the summit. They sat on the peak, looking out at the valley below. "Dad," Jake said quietly, "I know what you did." Tyler's blood went cold. "What do you mean?" "Chuck dying in prison. Ricardo disappearing. I'm not stupid. I know you used your military connections." Tyler said nothing. "I just want to say, thank you. The system would have let them off easy. You made sure they paid." "Jake, I don't know. Don't lie to me, Dad. Please." Jake turned to face him. "What they did to me. I should hate them, right? I should want revenge. But I don't. I'm too busy living my life, being grateful I survived. But you carried that hate for me. You made sure justice was done so I didn't have to." Tyler felt tears prick his eyes. "You weren't supposed to know. I'm your son. Of course I know." Jake smiled. "And I love you for it. What you did was wrong, probably illegal, definitely against everything you were trained to uphold. But it was also right. For me, for us, it was right." They sat in silence for a long moment, father and son, bound by blood and trauma and something deeper, the understanding that sometimes justice exists outside the law. "Do you regret it?" Jake asked. Tyler thought about Charlene rotting in prison, about Chuck bleeding out in a prison infirmary, about Ricardo Shepard living in fear. He thought about the moral compromises he'd made, the lines he'd crossed. "No," he said finally, "I don't regret any of it." "Good, because I wouldn't have wanted you to do anything different." They started the hike back down the mountain as the sun set, painting the sky orange and red. Jake moved carefully but confidently, his body scarred but unbroken. Tyler had spent 23 years in the military, fighting enemies abroad, protecting his country. But the most important battle he'd ever fought was for his son, against an enemy who wore his ex-wife's face. He'd won that battle, not through military might, but through the same ruthless determination that had made him a successful commander. He protected his son the only way he knew how, by eliminating the threats, no matter the cost. Some would call it vigilante justice. Some would call it murder. Tyler called it what it was: a father's love, expressed in the only language his enemies understood. And he'd do it again in a heartbeat. The end came not with dramatic confrontation, but with quiet resolution. Charlene died in prison 12 years later, a broken woman who'd spent over a decade reflecting on what she'd lost. Chuck was already gone, his death almost forgotten. Ricardo eventually died too, officially of a heart attack in some nowhere town, though Tyler suspected it was fear that killed him as much as anything. Tyler lived to see Jake graduate college, get married, have children of his own. He watched his grandchildren play basketball, saw them grow up safe and loved. And sometimes, late at night, he'd think about that hospital room where Jake had fought for his life, and the choices Tyler had made afterward. He'd think about the line between justice and revenge, between protection and destruction. He never regretted crossing that line. Some things were worth more than law, more than morality, more than his own soul. His son was one of them.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.